His feet would never leave the ground, but Gene was intent on making his own way into space. He'd found the scars of impacts that happened in the distant past. Now, he'd be one of the very first to find out if there were bullets out there that might strike the Earth in the future. It was an obscure, lonesome effort and involved frequent night-long drives to an observatory far from home. But in time, Gene found a new collaborator and companion for the road, a housewife who decided she too would become an astronomer. For Gene, it was a journey from deep disappointment to new dreams and adventures.
I had some real misgivings because I thought, this means that I'm going to go to Palomar and I'll have to stay awake all night long and observe, because I'd never stayed awake all night in my life. It was kind of a surprise to me to discover that I really loved the observing. I could, if I was very busy, stay awake all night.
In the early morning hours, the shoemakers would wend their way up Palomar Mountain, home to what was then the most powerful telescope in the world. The 200-inch Hale was the temple of deep space astronomy. It was called the Big Eye and was not designed for observing asteroids. In fact, before Gene came along, no one here or anywhere else had ever systematically searched for asteroids that could hit the Earth. Down the slope from the Big Eye was a tiny telescope that was virtually unused. The Little Eye was just what Gene needed.
This is kind of suited to our style and level of effort. We call it our mom and pop operation, and that's basically the way we've done it. Turned out to be a perfect instrument for our purposes.
Compared with the giant up the slope, the Little Eye did not look far, but it looked very wide. It was ideal for patrolling the inner solar system for stray bullets. Most astronomers saw the solar system as a harmonious arrangement of planets orbiting the sun. They paid little attention to the hundreds of thousands of asteroids, chunks of iron and rock left over from the formation of the major planets. Most of them orbit harmlessly between Mars and Jupiter, the asteroid belt. But if an asteroid veered out of its normal orbit into one that cuts across the path of the Earth, it would be anything but harmless. Most scientists believe that asteroids almost never became Earth crossers. Were the shoemakers searching for something that wasn't even there? The answer would not come easily. Asteroids look so small on film that Carolyn had to look for them with a microscope. Even then, they would be almost invisible amid the stars. But slowly they emerge from the dark, tiny dim blurs. Since they're so much closer to Earth than the stars, they seem to streak through the sky. In 1989, other astronomers captured the first ever close-up of an asteroid using a giant radar dish. This huge rock was more than a mile across. Later radar images showed even more ominous asteroids, mountains tumbling through space. Toutatis, a giant boulder doing 70,000 miles an hour, regularly cuts across the path of the Earth. 951 Gaspra, first of only 2 asteroids ever to be actually photographed, is as large as the island of Manhattan. 243 Ida is more than twice as large. Like Gaspra, it isn't an Earth crosser. But if it were, it could blast a hole as wide as the state of Texas. Gene didn't make it to the moon, but together with Carolyn, he's discovered scores of new celestial bodies. Between them, they found hundreds of asteroids and dozens of comets and helped transform the map of the sky. The solar system would never again seem stable or predictable. The harmony of the planets turned into a threatening cacophony.
What we've been able to show using this good old telescope right here, and by concentrating on surveying a near region around the Earth, we've been able to show that the Earth revolves around the Sun in its own swarm of asteroids. These things will hit the Earth in the future. They have hit the Earth in the past. These are the Earth-crossing asteroids.
In the 1980s, new evidence emerged of the terrible threat impact poses to life on Earth. Deep beneath Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula is a 190-mile wide crater made by a 100 million megaton impact. It dates to the time 65 million years ago, when 2/3 of all living species, including the dinosaurs, disappeared from the face of the planet. On March 22, 1989, an asteroid came within 6 hours of striking the Earth, but was not detected until much later. Other asteroids have come even closer. One would have hit the Earth if it had come just 4 hours sooner.
I don't think that people took the notion of the hazard of impact seriously in the early days of our work here. First of all, it took a while for the news to get out.
The news that would change everything began to break on the night of March 23, 1993. The shoemakers and their collaborator, David Levy, decided to take some pictures of the sky despite persistent clouds. This was not a good night for observing, much less for making historic discoveries.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Open. I'm on.
Okay, you're on.
I could hardly see the star I was supposed to be following because Jupiter was so close that the glare of the big planet was swamping the eyepiece.
25.
Okay.
All right. And plus 37.59.
Okay.
I started to examine the film, looking at all the things that I knew would be there, the ghost image of Jupiter and the spikes that we see on the films when we've got a very bright star or a bright planet. And then I started to go by something, and I thought, that's a galaxy? No, that's not a galaxy. And here was this most unusual looking object, and I thought, it looks like a comet.
It looked like a comet, all right, except it was a comet that was stretched out. Our films don't have enough resolution to really see what the details are, because we're covering a big area of the sky, and so the comet's actually quite tiny.
The team called their friend astronomer Jim Scotty, who was manning a more powerful telescope, and asked him to check their finding. He promised to call back as soon as his telescope could be repositioned.
Well, by now it's about 2 hours that has gone by. And then I decided the time had come. Jim had had enough time to take a look, and I called Jim Scotty, and he answered the phone in a voice that I had never heard before. And I said, Jim, are you okay? And he says, yes. David, the sound you heard is me trying to pick my jaw off the floor. And I said, do we have a comet? And he said, boy, do you have a comet. And he started describing what he saw. And I was repeating everything to the two of you. And every sentence, it had these 5 tails, at least 5 discrete nuclei, but he said, I think there's more. And meantime, that music, we had just had Beethoven's first symphony that was playing in our room, just happened to be on. And the 4th movement started, and it starts with this very slow little introduction. as Jim said, boy, do you have a comet? Then the symphony went into its full motion. And then right at that point, Jim says, boy, do you have a comet?
The comet, essentially an asteroid with a long tail of dust and gas, had been torn into several pieces by Jupiter's gravity.
Of course, the big kicker, the big news that it was going to hit Jupiter, didn't arrive until about 6 weeks later.